Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to the final Grand Prix before the 2026 summer break. As usual, it is always the final race before the summer break, the Hungarian Grand Prix here in Budapest, the 2026 edition, the 11th Grand Prix of the season. And yeah, final race before the summer break. So certain teams will be very keen to go into the summer break on a high. And looking at the running so far, certain teams, especially towards the front, will be looking to win this one to get themselves into a good championship position going into the rest of the season. And yeah, it's been the running so far. I wouldn't say it's been surprising necessarily. There's been a couple little surprises, but it has been positive to see the type of pace we are seeing from certain teams this weekend in terms of making this weekend, I wouldn't say more exciting, but making the championship, what the effect is going to be on the championship, more exciting. Because even though they didn't top practice 3, even though I think that was probably because they were probably running a tad more fuel, Ferrari, so far this weekend, have looked like the best team on the grid. Not just the best team and the quickest team, comfortably up until practice 3, where Lando Norris ended up going quickest with the fastest lap time of the weekend we've seen so far by quite a bit, 117.9. But like I said, I think Ferrari weren't pushing quite as hard as they can actually go in reality. And as far as I'm concerned, Ferrari, I do believe, have got the pace to be the real favourites for this Grand Prix. Whether they will, truly get pole, lock out the front row and win the race, or do either of those two things, or three things. So far, Ferrari look like the clear favourites to be coming out on top. Not only today, but probably tomorrow, which of course would close things right up in the championship. So we'll see just what goes down in qualifying today. Qualifying, it begins, as you can see, in an hour and 25 minutes from now. And as usual, as we do the qualifying build-up, we'll go through the running so far, who's looking quick, who isn't. We'll go through the sector time data. And one thing I will go through in a minute is just quickly showing pictures of the new Aston Martin car. Because Aston Martin have brought their B car. It is much quicker than it was before, but it is still painfully slow. I mean, they were very far at the back of the field, so it's not really a surprise, to be honest. But yeah, we'll get into that as well. And yeah, we'll go through all the data, determine what the pecking order is. I'll give obviously my predictions ahead of qualifying, and we'll do a round of other teams going into qualifying. And we'll go through, where they should all be at generally, and where they should be aiming for position-wise in this session. But hello, obviously, to all you guys. Hope you're all doing well ahead of this Hungarian Grand Prix. And no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, hope you're all having as best a time as possible, given whatever circumstances you may be going through. And I hope you can join me today in watching along and enjoying qualifying in Hungary. If you can't obviously watch along the session, then make sure to stick around here to listen along to me, and I will keep you absolutely bang up to date with everything going on, and you won't miss a thing. But yeah, we are here for the final Grand Prix before the summer break, and hopefully a bit more of a mix-up in terms of the people fighting for pole and the win in general this weekend. But obviously, one final thing I do want to just quickly go on to is that we do have a poll running in the chat. Obviously, as usual, I've asked you guys, who do you think will take pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix? And the 4 options in the poll are Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, and Kimi Antonelli. Those are the 4, in my view, most likely options for pole position. So out of those 4, who do you think takes it? I'll give obviously my thoughts later on in the build up here to qualifying, but let me know your thoughts, and that poll obviously will keep running for the next 2 hours, just over 2 hours, and we'll see who you guys vote for. But as promised, let's have a look at the new Aston Martin. Sorry, Aston Martin. My throat cutting out as usual. So here it is. I'll just raise up the picture so you can see a bit better. Doesn't really look dramatically different, but yeah, in terms of lap time, it does appear to be at least a couple seconds a lap quicker than it was, a week ago at Spa. So the lap time improvement is clear, and we'll get into the data and I'll show you the clear improvement in lap time. But because they were so far behind anyway, they're still really slow. There's another picture I've got as well. Let me just drag this one down. Yeah. If you studied the old Aston Martin car enough, maybe you can see some differences in the shape of the bodywork and the aerodynamic pieces. But yeah, this is the new Aston Martin car. One thing I do need to clarify, though, and I will clarify it also when we go through the data in a moment, this is only the new chassis and aero package. There is still a new Honda engine to come, which apparently will have quite a bit more power. Let me just raise up the picture again. Yeah, apparently there's a lot more power from the new Honda engine, and apparently that new Honda engine is coming at the next Grand Prix at Zandvoort, which is obviously in a month from now, first race back from the summer break. So there is still at least probably another half a second of performance, I would say, left for Aston Martin probably to gain. Maybe more, we'll see. It depends obviously how much Honda improve. But Aston Martin, again, looking better, no doubt, but still really slow. And we have to be clear with that. They are still really quite far off the pace. But let's get into said data. And we'll look at the results from practice 2 yesterday, which is, in terms of track conditions and weather conditions, the most representative practice session we've had so far. Lewis Hamilton quickest at a 1:18.7. But again, Lando Norris in practice 3 did a 1:17.9. So in terms of lap time, all the teams pretty much were going quicker in practice 3. But generally, I don't think the pecking order is really different, to what I think it, is, or what, practice 2 shows. But yeah, in practice 2, and not even just practice 2, in both Friday practice sessions, Ferrari were incredibly quick. As you can see in practice 2, half a second quicker than the next car, being the McLaren of Lando Norris. McLaren, as expected, looked quick, and they were very quick in practice 3, but I still don't think they've got enough pace to be pole position. I wouldn't say pole position contenders. I think they will be to a degree, but I just don't think that ultimately they've got enough pace to be actually on pole position. But McLaren still look quick. But yeah, Ferrari, just this track looks perfect for them. As we know, aerodynamically, chassis-wise, Ferrari are the best in that area with this car. And the improvements they made just after the the Monaco Grand Prix, where they brought some aerodynamic upgrades. Then they brought a slight engine upgrade, which gained them another 10th or 2 of lap time. And that's why they are just so quick around this track. So, yeah, Ferrari, if they don't end up on at least pole position, I would be very surprised, put it that way. Red Bull 4th with Max Verstappen. The thing is, even though that looks quite good for Max, given what I expected, I thought Max would be probably, 7th, 8th, to be honest. It's a bit of a false position, that 4th place, because one, Oscar Piastri, as you can see, nearly a second slower than his teammate. We obviously know that's not going to happen in in qualifying. Norris and Piastri tend to be really close on lap time around this track, so I think that will be the case again. So you would expect both McLarens to be ahead of the Red Bulls. And Mercedes, as you can see, were quite slow in practice. Nearly a second off the pace of Ferrari. And Antonelli was quite a bit slower than Russell. But I do think they weren't quite showing their full hand. They were a lot quicker in practice 3. They were only about a tenth and a half off the pace in practice 3. But still were behind Ferrari and McLaren, importantly. So Mercedes will improve, no doubt about it. They will make a lot of improvement compared to what they were looking like yesterday. But I don't think they're going to be one of the two fastest teams, in qualifying. I think you're looking at Mercedes probably as the third best team for qualifying. If they've got any more pace hidden that they could show, then great. But I really just don't think they've got the type of car that really suits this circuit like Ferrari have got and McLaren. McLaren in high-speed corners is really strong, as I'll show in a moment with the sector time data. And the Ferrari car, especially in the slow corners, as again I'll show with the final sector time data, is really, really good. And that's why Mercedes just fundamentally just don't quite have the pace to be as quick as those two teams. But they can definitely be ahead of Red Bull. Red Bull, I don't expect Red Bull to be really that quick today or this weekend in general. Red Bull, this should be one of their weakest tracks for them, for Red Bull. So I think Mercedes probably will be ahead of Red Bull, not by much, but they probably will be ahead. But in terms of how they'll do compared to Ferrari and McLaren, unless the two drivers for each of the Ferrari and McLaren teams makes big mistakes, then I just don't see how Mercedes can really get into the fight for pole position. They just don't fundamentally have a good enough car for this type of racetrack right now compared to those two teams. That's unfortunately just the way it is. Isaac Hadjar then in 6th. Liam Lawson 7th. Good to see Racing Bulls are still quick, despite this being a circuit that really should suit their car less so than the Spa track that we were obviously at a week ago, but they're still looking really quick. Audi, though, looking pretty competitive, as you can see. Only, just under a tenth of a second away from the Racing Bulls. So Audi have got a good car, which you would expect. Aerodynamically speaking, it's a good car. They're still, though, just lacking quite a bit of power from the engine, which around this track doesn't really mean anything in terms of performance. And then the other Racing Bulls of Lindblad in the top 10. So the two best midfield teams quite clearly look to be Racing Bulls and Audi. In terms of who will end up ahead, we'll get into that later on. In terms of, in terms of the rest of the field in practice too, let me just quickly go through it. Gabriel Bortoleto 11th, quite a bit off the pace of his teammate, but we know from the last couple of races Bortoleto's in really good form. Watch out for him today. I'm sure he'll be very quick. Esteban Ocon 12th, looking actually quite quick for once. 4/10 quicker than Behrman in practice too. Antonelli 13th and about a second slower than his teammate. So yeah, clearly Antonelli not able to do his best possible lap in practice too. Gasly 14th. Alpine are genuinely slow this weekend, which is a surprise. I really thought they'd be a bit stronger than that. Behrman 15th. I think for Behrman, if Ocon can be only 0.3 of a second off the top 10, given how Behrman's been performing compared to Ocon, I think that's encouraging for Behrman. So watch out for Haas. They might be a bit of a dark horse in that midfield. Albon 16th, Sainz 17th. No surprise, Williams have no pace at this track. And then Valtteri Bottas was 0.2 ahead of Fernando Alonso. So Aston Martin were not actually quicker than Cadillac in practice, and there was only one Aston Martin car in practice too, because Lance Stroll had a suspension problem in first practice, which is why he couldn't compete in the second session. And then Perez 20th and Colapinto 21st. Colapinto having some sort of, oh yeah, he crashed. That was what it was. He went in the wall, of course, in practice 2. So those are the practice 2 results. Let's get into the sector times. Now, the first sector is not really that important because most of it is flat out. You've got 2 slow speed corners, turn 1 and turn, turn 3? Turn 3, bit of a curious corner in terms of the lines you can take through there, but yeah, most of sector 1 is just flat out. Ferrari, though, quickest by 1/10 over the next best team, and I think that's purely because of their slow speed corner performance. Yeah, 1/10 clear of McLaren. Mercedes not too far behind also for Red Bull. And then Audi looking good, 1/10 quicker than Racing Bulls and Alpine. And then Williams, Haas, Cadillac only slightly slower than Haas, not too far behind Williams in the first sector, which is pretty decent. And then Aston Martin, despite having a faster car, still the slowest team in the first sector, which is still quite a bit, yes, down to aerodynamically having a really poor car, but they also, again, have a Honda engine which doesn't have the updates to it, which it will have at the next Grand Prix. But the first sector doesn't really matter here. It's the middle and final sector that really is what determines your lap. As long as your first sector is in the ballpark of where it should be, then that's all that matters, really. The middle sector, though, is mostly full of high-speed turns, and McLaren, as we've seen this season, in high-speed corners, they do have a pretty good car. In practice, too, they were ahead of Ferrari, not by much. Ferrari's still pretty good through the middle sector, and then a clear drop-off of 2/10 to Red Bull. No surprise there. Red Bull, that's about as good as I'd expect Red Bull's pace to be compared to McLaren and Ferrari in the middle sector. Mercedes, though, 3/10 off, really not good. They need definitely to be a bit closer in this part of the lap if they're going to give themselves a good chance of still a decent grip position. They can't be behind Red Bull in the middle sector. They need to be, really, I'd say 1/10 second at least quicker than Red Bull. So, yeah, I think another 1/10 of lap time would put them in a definitely a better position in this part of the lap. The Racing Bulls, very quick. Good to see. Audi, still decent pace. Bit of a better pace from Haas as well. And then Aston Martin, for the first time in, I think, every Grand Prix we've had so far, they are not the slowest team in, a sector, in a part of a track or part of a lap. 8th quickest team, and quicker than Williams, Alpine, and quite a bit quicker than Cadillac. Obviously, Cadillac ending up quicker than Aston Martin. That doesn't necessarily mean they are genuinely quicker, because Aston Martin, I don't think, with the best lap Alonso did, I don't think that was necessarily down to Alonso putting in his best lap when he could have. These sector times, these are the best sectors that every team did. Doesn't mean they did it on their best laps, if that makes sense. But, yeah, the Aston Martin is decent, probably at best. That's probably the kindest thing you could say, really, about the Aston Martin, is that it is decent in the middle sector. But still, 3/10, not even 3/10, 3.5/10. Well, no, not 3.5/10, 4.5/10 slower than Racing Bulls in just the middle sector. So they are still miles away from where they need to be. Williams, as expected, really slow in the middle sector. Alpine, this is really where Alpine have been and why they've been so slow this weekend. I don't know why they are so far off the pace in the middle sector. They should be at least say 4/10 quicker than that. 9/10 off is nowhere near good enough for them. And then Cadillac, the slowest team, not really a surprise, them being the slowest team. And then the final sector really shows best two things. One, Ferrari's clear quality in slow speed corners, but also why this weekend they do have the best car for this track. In just the final sector alone, 3/10 quicker than McLaren, 3.5 tenths quicker than Red Bull, and as you can see, Mercedes pretty much half a second down. You cannot compete with that. As long as Ferrari are at least level with McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes in the first two sectors, or after the first two sectors, if Ferrari have this type of pace in the final sector, it's game over. That's why they are the favourites this weekend. But yeah, 3/10 of a second gap in just the final sector is absolutely mental, quite frankly. We'll see if they can keep it up. But yeah, McLaren still doing, at least compared to everyone below them, a good pace. Red Bull, not too far off, but yeah, 3.5 tenths off in 22.5 seconds. That is quite incredible. Audi, though, good pace from Racing Bulls as well. Mercedes definitely can improve. I think Mercedes have got probably getting another 1/10.5, maybe even 2/10 of a second in their pocket that they could find compared to the teams ahead of them. And then you got Haas, and then Cadillac, 8th quickest team in the final sector. No idea why, but they were the 8th best team in the final sector in practice yesterday. Quicker than Alpine, quicker than Williams, and Aston Martin. So, yeah, really don't get why. Maybe the three teams below just cooked their tyres too much. But, yeah, Cadillac, good to see. That they're not absolutely miles off in every part of the lap. But when you compare Aston Martin and Cadillac, so Cadillac are quicker in Sector 1 and Sector 3, but Aston Martin are so much quicker in Sector 2. Aston Martin should be ahead of Cadillac in qualifying today. The gap, if you were to combine up all these best sector times for Aston Martin and Cadillac, Aston Martin would be ahead of Cadillac by 4/10. So Aston Martin, yeah, as long as they do the best possible lap they can, they'll definitely be ahead of Cadillac, maybe ahead of Williams as well, Aston Martin. So Aston Martin, I would say, have got probably a 10 to 20% chance of getting into Q2. Still, they do have a real lack of pace, to really be seriously challenging for it. What they need, though, is either one team in the midfield to have a really surprisingly bad Q1, or Alpine, who have been surprisingly poor this weekend. They need them to keep being as poor as they've been. If Alpine improve all of a sudden when qualifying starts, then Aston Martin probably will miss out and end up 17th, 18th, something like that, probably at best. But yeah, Aston Martin, they've definitely got the pace to be ahead of Cadillac and maybe Williams, but get into Q2, realistically, probably not. But again, it's not impossible. But if we go back to the results here of practice 2 from yesterday. So yeah, Ferrari have got the fastest car. I have no doubt about that. Second quickest, I would say McLaren. I think purely because of the consistency of pace they have through the whole lap. They're always, as you saw there in the sector times, they're always in the top 2 of every sector. So I think McLaren will be second quickest. Third quickest, I think, will be Mercedes, because there is more time that they can find compared to practice 2. I mean, if they, I think there was probably 4/10 of a second maximum on the table there. If they found it in practice 2, they would have been actually ahead of Red Bull. So, yeah, Mercedes, I think, will be ahead of Red Bull. Not by much, but they'll be ahead. And Red Bull, I think, still, as I thought coming into the weekend, I think they are the slowest of the front 4 teams. In terms of who the best midfield team is, it's very close between Racing Bulls and Audi. I think, though, it is probably Racing Bulls just by a few hundredths, maybe a tenth of a second max. But because it is so close, Audi are close enough to where they can definitely get ahead. Because Audi, I do think, have better drivers than Racing Bulls do. So it's going to be close. It's going to be very interesting to see who wins that battle. And of course, if Audi can win that battle, especially with both drivers, then getting both cars into Q3 would be a massive helping for them for the championship, as they really need to get themselves up the championship. And if they can, Audi, get themselves ahead of Williams by the end of this Grand Prix weekend, then that would be a good finish to the first half of the season. And then they can try and get after Haas in the championship, who are not too far ahead of them. Haas are only 11 points clear of Audi in the championship. Audi need to be at least finishing 7th in the championship this season. So, yeah, they need to keep up this form. But yeah, Audi and Racing Bulls, definitely the two quickest midfield teams. 7th quickest, I would go Haas pretty comfortably. Again, watch out for Haas. I think they're a bit of a potential dark horse with Oliver Behrman. And then after that, I would go Alpine 8th. And then probably, I'm going to keep it safe and say Williams 9th, and then Aston Martin 10th, Cadillac 11th. But Aston Martin, they're close enough to where they could definitely get ahead of Williams. So that's what I think the pecking order is. But let's get into my predictions for qualifying for my top 10. So, taking pole position, yet again here in Hungary, will be Lewis Hamilton, and looking out the front row will be the Ferrari team. 3rd and 4th will be the two McLarens of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Kimi Antonelli will be 5th, not too far behind the McLarens, but he will be just about ahead of Max Verstappen, the Red Bull, who, even though Red Bull have the slowest of the front 4 cars, I still think Max is going to give it a real good go and still be pretty close with McLaren and Mercedes. But Antonelli will be 5th, Verstappen 6th, Russell I'm going to go 7th, Hadjar in 8th, and then Bortoleto I'm going 9th, purely because not only the Audi car's quick, but Bortoleto has been in really good form in these last 2 or 3 races. And then Liam Lawson, who's also in good form, I think will complete the top 10 in 10th place. So there you go, guys. That's my prediction for qualifying. Let me know yours in the chat, as we have got just under, or pretty much, an hour now to go until qualifying starts at the Hungaroring. So get your comments in the chat. Who do you think is going to take pole? Who do you think is going to end up where? How do you think certain teams are going to do today? Let me know in the chat. And of course, keep voting in that poll. So let me know who you think will take pole position out of Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris, and Antonelli. And I will get to those results later on during qualifying. But as usual, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as we do watch-alongs throughout the season. And as well, for everybody watching, smash the like button as usual. As there you go, 59 minutes to go until qualifying begins. Yeah. Make sure to smash the like button, as usual. Does help the channel and the algorithm and helps show me you guys like the content. And yeah, I think what we'll do is answer and read out some comments from you guys in the chat for the next half an hour or so. And then I'll do a round of the teams soon before we get into qualifying later on. But as usual, there is a couple things I just want to discuss before we go any further. Firstly, a reminder, if you didn't know, that I will not be doing a race watch along tomorrow. Couple reasons for that. One, typically the Hungarian Grand Prix tends to be boring and it is hard to overtake at the Hungaroring. But secondly, the main reason is I am very busy at the minute and nearing burnout. And the reason that is, I'm not going to burn myself out because thankfully I've got an end in mind, if you know what I mean. In terms of, all this work that I've been doing at the minute is only going to be for the next couple of weeks, and then I'm going to have about 3.5 weeks of holiday, basically. So yeah, because I've been so busy this week, I've been getting a video, and I've got another video finished for the summer break, which will be coming out next week. I've got uni work to finish, and my uni semester finishes not next Friday, but the Friday after. So I am, foot down, flat down to the pedal on getting that uni work done, and getting it not just done, but of as best quality as possible. And I'm having to, dedicate quite a lot of time to doing that. But along with, getting these other videos done for the summer break, yeah, I've been just so busy in the last few days since since probably this time last week. I've been non-stop, when normally I would have at least a couple days off between, say, from Saturday to Saturday. I would have had at least a couple days off, just to, because I do need that recharging time and rest time. But yeah, at the minute, because I'm trying to get all these summer break videos ready, which half of them are now done. Just got to do 2 more, and then summer break content is all ready to go. And then yeah, the uni work, obviously I'm now in the final, couple weeks of that, and having to get that all finished, and there's still plenty of work to be done next week and the middle of the week after. Once I get that all done in a couple weeks from now, on the Friday the 7th, I think it is, of August. Once all that's done, then thankfully I can have the rest of August off, except for obviously the Dutch Grand Prix, where I'll be here streaming for at least qualifying for that event. But yeah, so that's mainly the reason I'm not doing a race watch along, because I need tomorrow off to recharge and not reset, but rest, and just save up as much energy as I can, because next week, Monday through to Friday, I'm going to be doing so much work to get, it all as done as possible. And then, same pretty much the week after. So I just need tomorrow to, you know, to buy me a bit of time, in terms of getting some rest in before that last couple weeks of, or couple big pushes, let's say, to get everything done. But yeah, like I said, that's the main reason I'm not doing the race watch along. But as usual, I will be doing a podcast on Monday reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix. And then another thing to update is next week there will be plenty of content on the channel. So Monday will be the podcast reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix. Tuesday, the day after, will be a video about Max Verstappen and where he potentially could be going in 2027, and where I think he should go. Like I said, that comes out on Tuesday. And then 2 days after that, on Thursday, will be a 2027 driver lineup prediction video. So next week, you've got 3 videos. Then the week after, there'll be 1 video, which will be a video. It'll be a mid-season driver rankings video for 2026, up to obviously this point of the season. And then the week after will be a video about Aston Martin and their car that's been, as far as I'm concerned, the worst car of all time, which I'll prove through, stats and data and all of that. So, yeah, that's what we're that's what we're gonna do here on the channel between now and the Dutch Grand Prix in a month from now, when we come back from the summer break. And then, like I said, for the Dutch Grand Prix, I'll be doing a qualifying watch along at least. We'll see about the race, but if it's a dry race, then probably not. And then I'll do a podcast the day after the race to cover whatever happens in that one. But Yeah, I'm just going full pelt at the minute with work, and I just need as many days off, especially at the weekend, that I can get to make sure I don't completely burn myself out and just, you know, lose myself. Because I know myself very well that if I go full pelt for too long, that I will burn myself out and it will have a massive detrimental effect to everything. So I'm just trying to avoid that. But like I said, once this is all done, all this work I've been on about, or once it's all done in a couple of weeks, I'll be fine, because then I'll be able to have pretty much the rest of August off. And then when I start to make some more videos and when uni comes back in September, I'll be fully recharged and ready to go. So yeah, I just need tomorrow off to rest and recover for the battle ahead, if you want to call it that. But anyway, let's read out your comments in the chat, as we've got 50 minutes pretty much to go until we get into qualifying. Qualifying in Hungary does tend to be pretty exciting. Last few years have been pretty good. Last year was a very surprising session. We thought McLaren were going to absolutely dominate, and then Leclerc from nowhere got pole. McLaren obviously locked out the front row in 2024. 2023 was a very exciting session where Lewis Hamilton took, I think, was it his last pole position? I think that was Lewis Hamilton's last pole 3 years ago. I wasn't here, though, because I remember that day very well. I was having a tooth pulled out because it was broken and was causing me a lot of pain. I don't know if you guys remember that time where I missed qualifying because of that. But yeah, it was for this race 3 years ago. But yeah, we've had many exciting qualifying sessions here. The one I remember the most is 2019, where we did a watch along here for qualifying, and Verstappen took pole. Really surprising pole position. No one thought he was going to do it, and then he did it, and then it led to a pretty exciting race. Not that I could, or not that me and Nib at the time could enjoy it, because I remember I was getting copyright striked halfway through the race. Those were the days. But yeah, normally qualifying is pretty good here, and normally the highlight. I know, we've had races here that are good. We have, but most of the time they tend to be pretty average and bog standard at best. So that's a big reason also why I'm not doing a race watch along, because it's just not worth it around this track. If it was, a different track, then I'd consider it. But yeah, this track just it's not a safe bet in terms of will it give us a good race or not. As just having a drink there. But yeah, let's get into your comments and questions and anything you have. Astro asking or saying Piastri doesn't get enough respect. Yeah, I'm biased, but think and hope he can get pole. Need to add Piastri or at least other options, Chazza. If you noted, the reason I always put 4 options is not because that's my special number. That it's because that is the maximum amount of people you can put in a poll on YouTube. So, I mean, if it was up to me, I would put 5 or 6 options, but that's as many as you can do. And I like to put as many options in there just in case, we get surprises. But yeah, I think that those are the 4 most likely. The reason I don't think Piastri will be on pole or even the quickest McLaren is because at the minute, Lando Norris is performing better than him. If you look, since, not even since the Canadian Grand Prix, but really since we came back from that break in April to the Miami Grand Prix, since then, Norris has been mostly the better driver. Monaco, Piastri was better. And then Austria, Piastri was, I don't think he was quicker in qualifying, but he performed better in the race. But most of the time, Miami, Montreal, Lando was quicker. I know Piastri finished, but Lando was ahead of him and probably going to finish the points before Lando had his issue. Barcelona, Lando was actually pretty close to the Mercedes and was in the fight for the win, arguably, you could say, at certain points of that race when Piastri was way down the order. Silverstone, Lando was comfortably quicker all weekend, and at Spa, same case. The only reason Piastri finished ahead was because Lando had a 10-place penalty and got unlucky with a virtual safety car. So, yeah. If you look at this season so far, overall, from race 1 to race 11, which is now, Piastri's had some really good races. Suzuka was the best one. But Lando has been better than Oscar this season. I don't think anyone can really debate that. So, yeah, newsflash or spoiler alert, I'm going to put Lando ahead of Oscar in my driver rankings video because, yeah, he's definitely been better. No doubt about it. In terms of how good Oscar's been and where I'm going to put him, I don't know yet. To be honest, I haven't made my driver rankings. I haven't actually written it out. Normally what I do is I write them out right before I record it. And I make sure to decide it there and then. But yeah, Norris definitely has been better than Piastri this season, 100%. Vettel Hamilton says Bottas has been faster than Perez so far this weekend, just like in Spa. Also, I think Bottas outqualified Perez at Silverstone. It looks to me that Valtteri is improving, but will he keep that seat? Still don't know. Tory Plus unit, I think it is, says if Hamilton gets pole, he sets a new record, the most poles ever by a driver at a single track. Indeed. I can't remember how many poles he has at this track. Is it 8 that he has in Hungary? Let me just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 8. So, yeah, this would be the 9th pole position if he gets it today. Silverstone, a lot of people do consider that to be Lewis's best circuit, but it's not. It's this one. This has always been the best circuit for Lewis Hamilton. And if he is somehow going to win the championship, then really he does, especially with how quick the Ferrari car is this weekend, I think Hamilton must win this race this weekend. If he wins and Antonelli's not on the podium, that is a really good gain of points. That's at least 13 points, which would put the gap back down between him and Antonelli back down to what it was before the Belgian Grand Prix, which was 32 points between Antonelli and Hamilton. That would keep Hamilton right in play. But if Hamilton doesn't win, even if he finishes ahead of Antonelli, it wouldn't be a big enough moment or turning point possibly for Ferrari and Hamilton in the championship. Hamilton has to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. One thing, by the way, we've had team order arguments here before, obviously Norris and Piastri a couple years ago. Do just keep your eye out for that in the race tomorrow. If Leclerc gets on pole ahead of Hamilton, or if Leclerc gets ahead of Hamilton on the first lap, and Ferrari are leading first and second, because what will Ferrari do for the championship, especially if Antonelli is low down the order or has a problem and is out of the race? Will they tell Charles to let Lewis through, or will they keep it first and second? Leclerc ahead of Hamilton. We'll have to see, but I think that's an interesting situation that all of you need to keep your eye on in tomorrow's race, because I think that could be a potential issue that Ferrari might need to deal with. For their sake, they need Hamilton to get pole and be leading at the end of the first lap, so they don't have to worry about that. But yeah, that is a potential issue there. Why is Antonelli in the pole of drivers that might get pole? Asked Vettel Hamilton. Because he's in one of the top 3 fastest cars, and also he's had the most poles this season, and he is the championship leader. So I've really got to put him in there. Yeah, I don't think he will get pole. I'd be very surprised if he did. If he does, then championship over, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I don't think he'll be on pole today. And if my prediction's true, it won't even be on the first 2 rows of the grid, which would really spice up things for tomorrow and the championship. Official J-Man, I think it is, says he's got a top 10, or they've got a top 10 of Norris, Hamilton, Antonelli, Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, Piastri, Hadjar, Lawson, Bortoletto. The only difference really between mine and yours is that you think McLaren and Mercedes will be a bit closer or quicker compared to Ferrari. I mean, hopefully that's the case. I'd love to have like 2-3 teams like right on the same pace in qualifying, fighting for pole, but I just think Ferrari, I don't think they were showing their full hand in practice 3, and I think Ferrari will have the best car in qualifying. Let me just readjust myself, and let's get to reading some more comments. Official J-Man also says both the car is better, but Hamilton has stepped up a lot, and that's in response to KH, who was asking, not sure if it's Hamilton or Ferrari that's improved his performance. Any thoughts? It's both. It's both. Ferrari's car fundamentally is a lot better than last year's car. So much better. It's actually a shame, really, because if we were still in the ground effect era, Ferrari would be dominating this season because their car, from an aerodynamics standpoint, is the best car pretty comfortably. But because the engines and the batteries matter so much this year, that's why they have only won, 2 of the 10 races we've had. When, again, if this was last year, then they probably would have won 7 or 8 of the 10 races, first 10 races. So that has helped a lot, but Lewis has definitely stepped it up because, he was not this competitive with Leclerc last year like he is. And so far this season, I still think has been better than Leclerc in 2026. Let me just scroll down a bit. Good to see Blade Rise in the chat. Astro asking, will we hear Nib tonight? Unfortunately not. He's busy, I think, doing something. Lewis's sprint pole in China last year not count as his last pole. Not in terms of an actual qualifying session, like a normal qualifying session. KH saying maybe Alonso can get to Q2, that'd be a win. It would for Aston Martin. But again, until that new Honda engine comes, we can't exactly say how much the complete new package, once the power unit improvement comes, how much of an improvement it is compared to what they had at Spa, for example, where they were 5.5 seconds off pole. Vettel Hamilton asks, hey Chaz, why isn't COTA considered Hamilton's favourite circuit? He won in 2012, 14, 15, 16 and 17. 6 out of 7 race win. I mean, during that period, yeah, he dominated that Grand Prix, but he hasn't won that race for 9 years. So I think that's why that's not considered one of his best tracks. Because, I mean, if you look at Silverstone in Hungary, he's always managed to be winning those races, no matter really the era or where his car was, you could arguably say Hamilton's one of his best drives of his career was here in 2009, where he took his first win that year. Obviously, the McLaren car was a lot better by that point of 2009, but yeah, Hamilton's win that day was special. It very much was. He yeah, showed exactly why he was and well is still a very special talent. But you know, for it to be one of Hamilton's best circuits, you can't have then like a 9-year gap between wins. I mean, at Silverstone, the longest he's gone without winning the British Grand Prix was, I think, was it 6 years between '08 and 2014, and then after 2014, he won it in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20. Then there was a gap of 4 years until he won it 2 years ago. So yeah, his two best circuits are Silverstone and Hungary, with Hungary being number one. KH asking, would Leclerc do that or just race Hamilton? In terms of, I'm guessing you're answering what I was talking about earlier in terms of, team orders. Leclerc, there's no way Leclerc would let Lewis through, because I think Leclerc, one, he knows that, Ferrari, even though they've got a very good car this weekend, they don't have this type of car every weekend, and that this would be a very good chance for him to get another win. And I think there is a delusional part of Leclerc's mind that still thinks he's in the Drivers' Championship battle. Leclerc is about 80 points, is it, behind Antonelli? So he's not out of the championship, but he is, pretty much out of the championship. He would have to gain a ridiculous amount, and Ferrari would still need to improve their car by quite a bit for Leclerc to gain on Antonelli enough for that to even be a possibility. But I just don't see Leclerc letting Lewis through. If he's told, let Lewis through for the championship, I just don't see that happening at all. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. KH asking, or saying, rather, hopefully Piastri gets another chance at the championship. Hopefully, but I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if last year was his only chance, because some drivers only get one chance. Ask Piastri's manager, Mark Webber. It happens where you only get that one chance. And then, it doesn't happen, and then that's it. There's other drivers who've had that. Montoya, back in the day, had that chance in 2003, and it wasn't really because of him, but it just never really came off. Eddie Irvine, very surprisingly, had a chance to win the championship. Nobody, including himself, thought he was going to win the championship, obviously, going into that season. But, he looked like he could win it. And then Hakkinen took it back on the last race. So, we've had instances where certain drivers have just had one chance, and that's been it. The thing with Piastri, if he wants another chance at the championship, two things need to happen. Either he stays at McLaren and McLaren get back to where they were, which is possible, but I wouldn't say it's probable. But if he does leave McLaren, he needs to be really smart about where he does go, because if he makes a series of bad decisions, then he's never really going to win a race again, never mind win a championship. So, yeah, we'll have to see what Oscar does in terms of where he stays, or if he does go, where he goes, and just how that happens. Blade Rise gives their prediction: Antonelli, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Verstappen, Russell, Hulkenberg, and then is it Hadjar, I think? You've gone with there in 9th, and then Lawson 10th. Watertap says, I think Ferrari have got a good car, but I think that the drivers can't push it hard enough every weekend. It's just the lack of consistency that hurts them. I do think one issue with the driver lineup is, even though it's very good, they don't have a situation kind of like what Red Bull have with Max Verstappen, where you can rely on one driver to be constantly pushing it to the edge every single weekend. Lewis Hamilton's been very good this season, no doubt, but let's not pretend like he's been getting the most out of the Ferrari car every weekend. And obviously we know Leclerc's not been doing that either every weekend. So that's the issue. When, again, if you put, say, someone like Max in that Ferrari, he would get the best out of it every single Grand Prix, basically, and be maybe more of a reliable bet. Vettel Hamilton asking Chaz, when do you think George is going to be back to his best? Well, firstly, once they fix this battery thing, which, by the way, it seems like Mercedes at least have learned what the issue is. Whether they fixed it or not, who knows? Apparently, it was some issue with the code in terms of the battery setup. They use high-tech computers these days to set all these very important things up, and apparently it was to do with the code. Apparently Antonelli had the same issue as well, but you'd imagine probably not to the same extent. So yeah, hopefully that issue's been fixed, because even though I don't think Russell has performed amazingly this season, I want to see him not be held back by some car issue. I don't think anyone wants to see that. We want to see him at his best so that we can see everyone at their best. As, by the way, I've just posted a link out for the stream, so hopefully we'll get some more jumping on in a second. But yeah, Russell, this season, he has not been at his best. Last season and the year before, he was performing at a better level than he was this year. It's just true. And I think the main reason is, well, there's a couple reasons really, but I think the majority or biggest reason is, now that he's got the pressure of having to fight for a championship, he's just not coping well under that pressure. And this is one thing we see all the time. We see these really quick, promising drivers come through, and they perform really well when there's no championship pressure, but then when you add in championship pressure, then they either rise to it or they fall. The ones who rise to it are the ones who win the championship. The ones who fall, especially when it matters most, never end up getting the job done. I mean, look at McLaren last season. Really, both drivers fell when the championship pressure was on, but Piastri fell at the most important point. That's why he lost out. In terms of this season, Russell, I think the pressure's got to him. Antonelli has been a lot better than last year and is now starting to show his talent and the reason he was put into the Mercedes car at such a young age, because he is a generational talent. He is the next, maybe Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton type driver in terms of talent level. And Russell has just not responded to that pressure. Because last season, Antonelli was not performing on the same level. We saw glimpses of Antonelli's brilliance, but it was only glimpses at best. And Russell was able to have a much easier ride. But again, at the minute, Russell, I just don't think is coping with that pressure. And I think that's why this season he's been behind Antonelli most of the time, because I think he is kind of still expected to be at least right there with Kimi, if not quicker, because especially of what happened last season. But just isn't coming off for him. Again, the engine issues are not helping, but I don't think that is the majority of the reason, or all of the reason, let's say, why he has not been winning the last couple races. I don't think he wins at Silverstone anyway, even if he doesn't have that battery problem. I think he still finishes in second place. Spa, he probably would have finished the race because he wouldn't have been so he wouldn't have been in such a bad position where he had no battery at all on the second half of the Kemmel Straight, which is what caused him and Lewis Hamilton to be, side by side in the way they were. So, he would have gained some points there probably, but yeah, I don't think there would have been a massive difference. I think we need to remember as well, these battery problems Russell's been having, they've only been for the last couple races. It's not like it's been every race this season. So, we need to remember that when talking about George Russell, because I don't want that to skew what's been I think a bit of a disappointing season from him. Sorry, I was just pausing there because I've seen some massive football news that's just come out in the last hour. But yeah, that's what I think it is. It's just the championship pressure is getting to him. If Leclerc lets Hamilton through, that's basically Leclerc accepting his season is over. True. But, realistically, is it even in play that Leclerc can win the championship? It depends, again, really where Antonelli is. Because let's say Antonelli is out of the race. If Leclerc wins, Leclerc could be only just over 50 points behind. So you could then at least argue that, that Leclerc should keep ahead because he will then bring himself into the championship fight. And then Ferrari would at least have two drivers going for the championship. And that would increase their chances of bringing home a championship. But it really depends on where Antonelli is. So we'll see. But if Antonelli is, as far as I'm concerned, if he's in the race and he's in the top 5, then I think it should be Hamilton who should be winning that race. But, whether they can pull that off, we'll have to see. Rainer Reiter, I think it is, says Ferrari appears to be very fast, but it seems like Leclerc is too eager to defeat Hamilton and messes up a lot like the crashes he's recently had. Yeah, I do think his over-eagerness definitely gets to him. There is one comparison that Leclerc has had that I've seen someone online on Twitter that I follow and has a decent amount of followers in the F1 community. This certain person, they've compared him to this certain driver quite a bit, but when you really look at Leclerc's performances, you can't help but agree with the similarities. And Leclerc, that comparison is to Juan Pablo Montoya, where Montoya would be very, very quick. On his day, Montoya was arguably the quickest driver in Formula 1. But with Montoya, it was very much, electrifying, amazing speed or crash. There was no grey area or middle ground with Montoya's performances, and that's kind of what it feels like with Leclerc. It's either stunning pace and fighting for wins and winning races that, he shouldn't be maybe winning, you could argue, or, putting it in the barriers in Monaco, putting it in the barriers in Barcelona. Vettel Hamilton thought it was Cameron CC. No, it's someone else. This person I'm on about is he's not a content creator, but he does have a few thousand followers on Twitter. but it is an apt comparison. He is one of those types of drivers where he's either incredibly quick and is probably the quickest driver in Formula One when he's 100% on it, or he's in the barriers, or in the side of another car. That's just the way he is. Will he win a championship like that? Probably not, unless he gets a quick enough car, but that's down to Ferrari, of course. Blade Rise asking, what teammate pairing would you say has been the most, or has been the strongest so far this season? This might be a surprise, but I'd say the Racing Bull one, Lawson and Lindblad. They've really surprised me just how consistently good they've been. But they've both been regularly scoring points, so I'd say them. The only other one I'd probably say is Leclerc and Hamilton. But again, Leclerc had a few races where he was just performing terribly and not really contributing anything meaningfully to what Ferrari were doing, when Lawson and Lindblad have always been there together, always. So I'd probably say they've been the best performing as a teammate pairing. Obviously, they're not the best driver lineup, but they performed as a team the best. Can Ferrari be dominant the second half of the season? Asks KH. Depends purely on car upgrades. They can win races, but again, if they want to dominate, depends on upgrades. Blade Rise says, looking like Sepang will host a race this year now. Just to clarify with that, yeah, there are rumors from Planet F1. You guys might know that publication. They're reporting that it is going to be imminently announced that the Malaysian Grand Prix will return on the calendar later this year to replace one of the Middle East races, which won't be happening because of the Iran war. That is not confirmed, so we'll wait and see. Planet F1 don't have a great track record when it comes to accurate reporting, so I'm going to wait and see on that. There are other tracks as well that reported to maybe be contenders. Imola apparently is one. Turkey still is one. So, yeah, we'll see. But it looks like it's going to be early October. It'll be in between the Azerbaijan and Singapore races, whatever race they do select. Bearded Scott says, in all fairness to Leclerc, it must be stupidly stressful having a 7-time world champion, one of the goats of the sport, in the same car as you. Absolutely, but maybe this is just us placing this pressure and expectation on him too much when maybe he isn't necessarily deserving of it. If he wants to be world champion, he needs to find a way to deal with that. Because at the end of the day, we all know what his goal is, to win the world championship as a Ferrari driver, but he can't let whoever his teammate is get to him. But we'll see. He's obviously back in form now. One at Silverstone, second at Spa. Let's see what he does this weekend. Let's see whether he keeps up his great form and whether he can pull himself back into the championship fight somehow. But yeah, I think what we'll do is I'm gonna just quickly do a roundup of the teams, and then I'll answer a few more of your comments, and then, of course, we'll get into qualifying itself, which is in just 18 minutes time, guys. Not too long. So yeah, let's do a roundup of the teams. Mercedes, this is probably the worst they've looked all season. The only Grand Prix comparable to the performance they've shown so far is Miami, where they were really on the back foot. But of course, they still ended up winning that. And we're right up near the front grid as well. Will they do the same today? If they do somehow get themselves on the front row or even pole, that would be amazing, quite frankly. But I do think legitimately they've got a slower car than Ferrari and McLaren. Maybe the gap will be closer than I'm expecting, but I still think they have the third best car at best. So I think the aim at least needs to be a second row grid slot. If they get on the front row, great, fantastic. But second row, I think, is very likely at best where they could finish. For Ferrari, I still think they've got the fastest car, so they must deliver on that. Front row lockout is the only thing that really will be acceptable, I think, unless McLaren or Mercedes are suddenly much quicker than before. But with both drivers performing pretty well, I don't see why they can't lock out the front row. Hamilton and Leclerc are both very good here. Leclerc took pole here last year. Hamilton has had pole here 8 times before. So a front row lockout is absolutely on the cards for the Scuderia. Red Bull, I still think, have got the slowest of the front 4 cars. Max Verstappen is doing a good job, but he knows the Red Bull car just doesn't have what it takes to be really on the front 2 rows of the grid. I think as long as Max is on the 3rd row, then that's really the best he can do. If he's any higher than that, fair play. McLaren, maybe a bit of a dark horse. If they can get close enough to Ferrari to at least put them under some serious pressure, maybe McLaren can take pole. They did obviously take pole and lock out the front row here 2 years ago, and they really should have done the same last year as well. They are very good here. Good history here. Good car for this track, just not as good in the slow speed corners as Ferrari. But let's see if they can close that gap and put Ferrari at least under pressure. Into the midfield, Audi looking pretty good here. Aerodynamically speaking, we do know normally they've got a pretty good car. And it's showing to be the case. Audi definitely top 10 contenders. Watch out for Gabriele Bortoleto. Last 2 weekends, he's been really good. And I don't see why he can't be in Q3 here today. Watch out for Hulkenberg as well, who also tends to be pretty decent at the Hungaroring. Haas, look out for them. Might be a dark horse with Oliver Behrman. This is a bit more of a friendly track for them because the biggest problem for their car is the lack of power and just straight line speed in general that their car has. But here, that's not an issue. So they are looking maybe to be just outside of the top 10, maybe even sneak in if Behrman can put in a superb lap. Racing Bulls still look very quick and are probably still just about the quickest midfield team. Going to be tough, though, to get both cars into Q3. If they can do it again, once again here, that would be very impressive. But most likely, it will just be one Racing Bull making it into the top 10. We'll see if that is indeed the case. Alpine should improve on their pace from yesterday, but I don't think realistically they're going to be top 10 contenders. I just don't see them on the same level as Racing Bulls and Audi. Best they can do is probably get both cars into Q2. Williams look pretty bad. I think they're probably going to end up with both cars knocked out in Q1. And then with Aston Martin, Lance Stroll, we know will get eliminated, probably in 20th place or something. But for Fernando Alonso, can he drag this car into Q2? If he can, it would be a win for this team and a big step forward. Personally, I don't think he'll be able to. I don't think the pace is there. But with Fernando Alonso, anything is possible. And for Cadillac, sadly, because of Aston Martin's improvements, for now, they are back to being, or not back to being, but they are the slowest team on the grid. Let's see in the coming races if they can bring enough improvements to get back ahead of the Aston Martin team. But here's a reminder of my prediction for qualifying. Ferrari, I think, will lock out the front row. Hamilton, I think, will take pole ahead of Leclerc second. And then Norris 3rd, Piastri 4th, Antonelli 5th, Verstappen 6th, Russell 7th, Hadjar 8th, Bortoleto 9th, and Liam Lawson, I think, will be P10. So, guys, let me know in the chat, as we're not too long away, who do you think is going to end up on pole, and how do you think certain teams are going to do today? Let me know before we get into the session itself, as we have got 13 minutes to go until qualifying begins in Budapest, a very hot and sunny Budapest, as usual. Budapest is always hot and sunny, really. And today it's, I think, 28 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, it's for the race, it's about 5 degrees hotter. So, tyre wear is going to be, as usual, as it always is in Hungary, going to be very important issue. And I have no doubt that it'll be at least a two-stop race. As I mean, well, last year wasn't a two-stop race for everyone. Obviously, Lando Norris did a one-stop race and won because of that, but it wasn't sunny for last year's race. It was overcast. If it was sunny, then I'm not sure he would have been able to pull it off, to be honest. But let me just have a last bit of water, then I'll read a final few of your comments. And yeah, let's just get on to a few of your comments. Astro asking, do you think, or saying rather, do you think McLaren will improve and become more capable of winning races? Sure, hope so. But I'm definitely biased here. I do think McLaren will improve, and I think they will be a championship contending team soon. Next year, they'll be a lot better. I have no doubt about that. Whether they'll be good enough to win the championship or fight for it is too early to say. Obviously, if they go and sign Max Verstappen, that would massively help because Verstappen is clearly better than the two drivers they've got. But yeah, I think even if they keep the same driver lineup, they will be closer to the front next year. I have no doubt about that. I trust McLaren to close that gap. But really, I would say for McLaren in this era, if they're gonna get to the point of, or back to where they were last year of, winning races and winning the championship, I think really they have to make sure they start next season with a really strong car, say like Ferrari did for this year, because if they don't, then I think their championship window in these regulations will be pretty small going forward. They've got to make sure they're much stronger starting from next year, because I still think next year and the year after, 2028, are pretty good chances for McLaren to be title contenders. But again, it all depends on pre-season next year and whether they turn up with a much better fundamental car, which you would hope and expect at least most of that to be true, that they come up with a much better car. Let me see if I can read any more comments from you guys in the chat. Don't think I've read. Have I read all the comments? KH saying Mercedes needs competition. They've got it at the moment for sure. I mean, we have to remember Ferrari have won 2 of the last 5 or 4 races, so they've definitely got competition. I still think Mercedes, if you look at the tracks we've got on the calendar, Mercedes are still the favourites to win around most of them. But as we saw at the last Grand Prix, even though they had the best car, it still, still didn't come easy, and they still needed to have a last few lap battle with Ferrari to get it. But just saying on the TV broadcast, Carlos Sainz getting suited up. And also Lando Norris getting ready as well. But what do you call it? Let me just try and I just accidentally clicked off the program. And there you go. And yeah, qualifying just a few minutes away, and we will find out who takes pole here. And I think what's good about this session, not only is usually it's quite close here, but so many drivers in the front few cars have taken pole here before. Leclerc last year, Hamilton, of course, 8 times previously. Lando Norris took pole here 2 years ago. Max Verstappen, of course, has took pole here couple times. George Russell's first ever pole position was here in Hungary 4 years ago. So plenty of drivers have done it. They've took pole here, but it, obviously getting that into a win, usually in Hungary, it should be easy enough, but some of those drivers made it look a bit harder than maybe it should be. I've just seen, by the way, further breaking news, further reporting from a more reliable source. BBC Sport are reporting that it is understood that Malaysia's Sepang circuit will host an F1 race in October. Only official confirmation and minor details are left to be finalised. That's from BBC Sport. And that Grand Prix will be on the weekend, I think, of October 4th. October 4th will be the race day. The qualifying day will be October 3rd. So, yeah, I cannot wait for that. I have been desperate to see this Malaysian Grand Prix back on the calendar. It used to be one of my favourite races, especially one of my favourite non-European races. And looks like we're getting it back. Will it stay? Maybe for the future? Will we get it maybe in the future as well? We'll see. Hopefully it'll be a good enough weekend to where it convinces Liberty Media to keep it on the calendar somehow. But yeah, the Malaysian Grand Prix looks like it's making its return. And by the way, if it does, I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for it. Purely because it could be the only Malaysian Grand Prix we get for years, and I want to make best use of it. And I'm sure Niblo, my co-commentator, I'm sure he'll join me for that as well, because obviously it'll be great timing for him. But the F1 intro now begins to play. So it is now time to get into a final couple bits of important detail before the session begins. And that is, of course, the championship standings. Kimi Antonelli, after winning the Belgian Grand Prix so brilliantly, he is now 45 points clear of nearest rival Lewis Hamilton. And that's really why Hamilton must get pole position today to try and take the gap back down to something more manageable going into the summer break. George Russell third, 50 points behind his teammate. Leclerc in fourth, and as you can see, just under 80 points behind the Mercedes driver. Lando Norris then in fifth, just over 10 points clear of Oscar Piastri sixth. Piastri only 1 point clear of Max Verstappen in the championship. Isaac Hadjar just over 30 points behind in eighth. Pierre Gasly is in ninth, and Liam Lawson 3 points behind, still in P10. On the constructors' side, Mercedes are 70 points clear, just over 70 points clear of Ferrari. McLaren are then comfortably third. Red Bull have closed the gap a bit and are about 45 or 44 points rather behind McLaren in the battle for third. Alpine then in the battle for fifth, are level on points with Racing Bulls on 61 points. Who will be ahead after this weekend? We'll have to see. Haas then in seventh, Williams in eighth. Audi after the last Grand Prix have scored 4 points, so they're now just 1 point behind Williams in the championship. Aston Martin 10th with 1 point, and Cadillac last, of course, with nothing. And yeah, Q1 will be underway in about 2.5 minutes from now. And it'll be an 18-minute long session. And as usual, we knock out the 6 slowest cars. 3 of the 6 should be the 2 Cadillacs, Perez and Bottas, and and Lance Stroll. And then you're looking at the other 3. I'd say still pretty likely to be the 2 Williamses of Albon and Sainz, and then the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso. So those should be the 6 that are eliminated. But of course, nothing is guaranteed in this game. As we're looking at world champion Lando Norris just getting belted into his McLaren. Of course, he won this Grand Prix last year. A brilliant win after switching to a one-stop strategy that he made work. And he just about held on to victory. And ultimately, you could argue him holding on to that win won him the championship. As we're now seeing Max Verstappen, who finished second to Norris in the championship. He's currently in 7th. Will this be the final race for Max before he announces what he's doing next year? We'll have to see. I do think, by the way, that with Verstappen, I do think, obviously, that he's going to leave Red Bull, but I think him announcing it, I think will be no doubt within the next 6 weeks. Probably at the latest, the Dutch Grand Prix, obviously his home Grand Prix. That'd be obviously a great place for him to announce where he's going to be racing in 2027. But, yeah. I think definitely, at most, within the next 6 weeks, Verstappen will announce where he's going next year. And it looks to be either Mercedes or McLaren, who will gain the signature of the world's best driver. That's a story for another time. Today, it's all about qualifying. So we've got 20 seconds to go. And now 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there you go. Qualifying has begun at the Hungaroring. And let's get into it. So, in terms of lap time, the best lap time we've seen this weekend is a 1:17.9, which is pretty quick compared to what we saw in practice 2 on Friday, which was a 1:18.7. I think pole position today is going to be a low 1:17. So to get through to Q2, you're going to need to do, I think, a low 1:19 at the slowest. So maybe a mid 1:19 if certain teams are a bit slower than expected. But I think anywhere from a 1:19.3 and quicker than that, and you should be getting into Q2. And we'll see, of course, what the quickest lap time ends up being. Should be a late 1:17, whatever the quickest time is. As Fernando Alonso's on track, so is Lance Stroll. And we've also got the 2 Williamses and the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas. As we're looking at Hulkenberg there in the Audi. Antonelli on the broadcast, still in his garage. Of course, doesn't need to go out yet. The front runners can just bang in 1 lap and that'll be enough, really, to get through. As Carlos Sainz starts his first lap. Williams, sadly, still really slow. It does feel like, to me, Williams have given up with this car and they're just focusing on next year's car. because I'm not hearing anything about any big upgrades coming. So I think they're just going to go to the end of the season with what they've got, and just next year then, they should be much quicker. If they're not quicker next year, then I think we're going to see a mass exodus from that team, especially on the driver lineup end. As Sainz just went wide on the exit of turn 4, I think that was. Went practically straight on, which because the Williams just didn't want to turn. As Albon, not too far behind him, is coming through the middle sector. And Albon now into the final sector as the Williams looking absolutely dreadful on turning there to turn 12. Rear end trying to step out. And Albon doing his best to drive the shopping trolley through these final few corners, as Carlos Sainz goes quicker than Valtteri Bottas despite that moment going off track, as Alex Albon now goes quickest. Fernando Alonso, though, done 2 purple sectors. Stroll does a 120.8. Goes 7 tenths quicker than Albon. Alonso goes a couple tenths quicker onto a 120.6. Those lap times, though, are pretty slow. So either Aston Martin are not very quick, or, we know they're not very quick, but you know what I mean? Either those times are not very good, or the track hasn't quite rubbed it in just yet. So Alonso and Stroll first and second, the only time you'll be seeing that this season. And then Alex Albon is third, and those are the only 3 times as Sainz had his lap time deleted and Valtteri Bottas did a lap, but it was not really counted because it was so far off the pace. As Lewis Hamilton is out there on the medium compound tyre, and it's just in a purple first sector despite going very wide at turn 5. Just shows you the pace difference even on a harder compound. The medium is supposed to be 7 tenths slower than the soft. As what do you call it? Valtteri Bottas has done a new lap. Sergio Perez has as well. As Hamilton, 2 purple sectors. And let's see how much quicker he is than the Aston Martin on a 7 tenths of a second slower tyre. 1.9 seconds quicker. What a joke. As Leclerc goes second, a 1/10 slower than Hamilton. It's actually the exact gap between the 2 Ferrari drivers as it was in practice too. 0.148 of a second. But yeah, the field spread is, wow. They're nearly 2 seconds quicker than the Aston Martin on a tyre that is 7 tenths slower than the soft. So this shows you they could be 2.5 seconds quicker overall compared to Aston Martin. As Antonelli is on his first qualifying lap, he's on the soft, and it looks like he is backed off already. Or he's just doing another warm-up lap. Yeah, he's definitely backed off. As Leclerc has had his time deleted for a track limit violation at turn 3. That would have been the exit of turn 3. Would have ran slightly too wide. As further behind, we're looking at George Russell, who's also on a warm-up lap. So not the most exhilarating start to Q1 here, is not too far behind. Is Max Verstappen on a push lap. And so is the other Red Bull of Isaac Hadjar's Verstappen. A lot of steering lock having to go into the first part of the turn 6 and 7 chicane. And yeah, this Red Bull, Max is really struggling to get the front end in. He's having to use a lot more steering lock, I think, than he wants to. Saying that, it's in the purple middle sector, but that's compared to Hamilton on the medium tyre. And for a time on the medium tyre, that is a really good time from Hamilton. Really good lap time. As, oh, look, the front end washing out so much on that Red Bull. He was just going so wide. He does go quickest, but only by half a tenth ahead of Hamilton on a much slower tyre. And Isaac Hadjar, no better. He goes third. So that's just confirmation that the Red Bull car just doesn't have the pace or the grip to really do anything this weekend. As we're looking at Antonelli now on a proper push lap. He's done a purple first sector. For this to be a good first lap, Antonelli has got to do, I would say, probably a very low 118, a 118.0, 118.1, if he wants to make this a really good lap. But at the minute, he's only a quarter of a second up on Verstappen. So this looks like it's only going to be probably a 118.3 at best. As Gasly goes fourth, Leclerc now goes fourth on another lap on the medium. Here comes Kimi Antonelli through the final corner. Colapinto goes fifth. Antonelli only second. So had a poor final sector, and that is not a good lap time to start Q1. As we're now looking at George Russell, who is once again struggling. He's going slower than his teammate. As, car is all over the place in the final corner. And he goes fifth. Only a couple tenths slower than his teammate, but the car was so oversteery in that final corner. As Russell, fifth. Hulkenberg has gone up to 7th place. Esteban Ocon has gone 9th. Bortoleto goes 8th. 7th and 8th for Audi at the minute. Piastri goes 5th. Lando Norris has done 2 purple sectors. This is looking like a decent run. Liam Lawson goes up to 7th place for Racing Bulls. And Leclerc round the final corner to the line and a 118.2. So that is that's a good lap time, but it's not quite as quick as he would have wanted to go compared to what Ferrari did on the mediums. So still a bit of improvement to come if they want to be lapping really strongly for this part of qualifying. As we're looking at both Aston Martins on new laps. Alonso goes up to 12th. As Bortoletto's had his time deleted, that's why he's been put down the order. I was wondering why Bortoletto's gone down. As Stroll goes 16th. So Bortoletto is now at the very back. And then Bottas and Perez are 20th and 21st. Sainz is 19th. Albon is 18th. And then Oliver Behrman is in 17th. And then in just about making it into Q2 at the minute is Stroll 16th. Gasly 15th. Ocon is 14th. As Bottas improves his lap time but stays in 20th. And Perez also improves his lap time but stays 21st. Colapinto is 13th. And then Alonso 12th. Hulkenberg 11th. Lindblad has gone up to 10th. So there you go. With 6.5 minutes to go, the drop zone is Behrman, Albon, Sainz, Bottas, Perez, and Bortoletto. Bortoletto will definitely get through. Audi are easily quick enough. But Behrman, interestingly, in the drop zone. Who would have expected that? That's pretty much everyone now coming into the pits for that final set of tyres. at least for this session. And they're just showing where the track limit violation was done. For Bortoletto, it was exit turn 4, just went a bit too wide. I don't think he gained any time from doing it, but those are the rules. But in terms of lap times at the front, very good. Well, good lap time for Norris, but it's that lap time from Lewis Hamilton. That's the most impressive time. 4.5 tenths off only on the medium, which is 7 tenths at least quicker than the slower, than the soft. So if Hamilton had done that time on the soft, Hamilton would be on a 1:17.9 and would be quickest, and by what, 3 tenths he would be quicker than Norris. So far Ferrari look to be the quickest. And one thing I will say, actually, is Red Bull, at least so far, seem to be a tad quicker than expected. But we'll see if they keep that up or not. As at the minute, they're just about ahead of Mercedes in the current Q1 order. As Hulkenberg is in the garage. Will he stay there? We'll have to see. He's 8 tenths of a second clear of Alonso, who's only 1 place behind him. The field spread this year has been incredible, but especially in this qualifying session, it is quite incredible. We've seen, I can remember Q1 sessions here, even just a few years ago, where it was only like a second covering the top 20, or like maybe 1.2 seconds covering the top 20. From first to second right now is 3 seconds. So, yeah, the field spread is enormous right now, but thankfully that will improve over time. But I don't think anyone from Hulkenberg up doesn't need to go out again to get through. Obviously, Verstappen and Antonelli and Russell. Who else? Lawson, Leclerc, Lindblad, Hulkenberg. They've all come out for another lap, but that's just to try and generate more confidence for later. They don't actually need to do another lap, if you know what I mean, because they're already through. The only drivers that are at risk of being eliminated are Alonso, Colapinto, Ocon, Gasly, and Stroll. And then, of course, everyone in the elimination dropout zone is at risk as well. So it's really from anyone from 12th till 22nd is who we're looking at. Everyone from 11th place up is fine, and they're already through. So we're looking at Max Verstappen on a new lap. Be impressive if Max could get a very low 1:18 with this. But he's nearly 4 tenths behind Norris, and on this lap he's not lapping much quicker than he was before. So this doesn't look like it's going to be too much of an improvement from Max Verstappen. As once again the Red Bull understeers like a cross-channel ferry through the final couple corners. And he doesn't actually improve his lap time, so there you go. Waste of a lap. As here is Antonelli, but he's not improving his lap. He's not done any personal best sectors. He does, though, improve the final sector, and he goes second. Russell still fighting his car like mad through the final corner. And he only improves up to 6th. Russell, once again, not having a good qualifying. Here is Carlos Sainz. To the line. He goes 16th for now, but I'd be surprised if that gets him through. Very surprised if that gets him through. Alex Albon, 17th. He is surely out of Q1. Leclerc is up to 8th. And he did that on the medium tyre as well. So Ferrari have saved a set of tyres. That's brilliant for them. Bortoletto has gone all the way from 22nd up to 9th place. Behrman goes 14th. Esteban Ocon has gone 13th. Lindblad is 11th. And now in the drop zone, you've got Gasly. So Sainz and Albon are out. So both Williamses are out. As Hulkenberg up to 6th. Brilliant lap from Hulkenberg. A 1:18.7. As here's Valtteri Bottas fighting his car like mad through the final corner, but he stays in 21st. Sergio Perez stays 22nd. Fernando Alonso currently in 15th. Can he get through? He's into 14th. I think he's done it. I think Alonso has just put himself into Q2. The only two cars left to go are Colapinto and Gasly, but even if they go quicker than Alonso, Alonso will still be through, so he's done it. Fernando Alonso has made Q2 by some absolute miracle. He's done it. As Colapinto, currently 16th, both Alpines are trying to not only get themselves through, but trying to eliminate Oliver Bearman in the Haas. Colapinto goes down to 17th because Gasly has gone 13th. And Colapinto, he now goes 14th. So Oliver Bearman is out. And that is confirmation that Fernando Alonso has made Q2 in 16th place. Only by just over 1/10 of a second, Alonso has done it. Brilliant drive, and I know 16th place, that's still a poor result for a team like them, but that is a whole lot better than they've had all season long. So there you go. Alonso is through to Q2. But let's go through your drivers. Now that Q1's over and done with, let's go through the drivers who've made it through to Q2. Norris, Antonelli, Verstappen, Hamilton, Hadjar, Hulkenberg, Russell, Piastri, Leclerc, Bortoletto, Lawson, Lindblad, Gasly, Colapinto, Ocon and Alonso. And through, or no, it's not through, out of Q1, Oliver Bearman, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, Lance Stroll, Valtteri Bottas, and Sergio Perez. And Q2 will be underway shortly. But what a job by Fernando Alonso. That is, yeah, a super lap. He was half a second quicker than Stroll. And who would have thought he'd be ahead of the Haas there, Bearman? That's a big shock, no doubt. But Alonso once again proving, even at the age he's at, you know, into his mid-40s, he's still one of the premier drivers of Formula One. So congrats to him. Bearman, poor performance. He should not be behind his teammate. He should be making it through. No excuses there. For Williams, just too slow. 18th and 19th. I think we all knew that was going to happen. Stroll 20th. No surprise. Stroll, even though Stroll, I think, outqualified Alonso last couple races before this one. As usual, when the car is actually good in dry conditions, Stroll is nowhere. And then Cadillac on the back row. Again, no surprise. So mostly not a surprise, except for Alonso making Q2. Alonso will not get any higher than 16th. There is absolutely no chance of that. But at least he'll be in the race to be able to actually fight other cars. That is... By the way, I've just seen something absolutely ridiculous. Remember I told you earlier about the Malaysian Grand Prix, the BBC reporting Malaysian Grand Prix is going to be held in October. Apparently, this is according to their report, The race will be presented as the Bahrain Grand Prix being held in Malaysia. Why not just call it the Malaysian Grand Prix, for fuck's sake? Why have you got to be so stupid? Like, come on. Like, really? We're all going to pretend it's the Bahrain Grand Prix, even though it's in a different, not only country, a different continent. Like, come on. Like, different region, part of the world. It's not like it's next door. If it was like a country next door, then fine. You know what I mean? If it was like, you know, let's say the British Grand Prix couldn't be held for whatever reason and they held it in Ireland, you could kind of excuse it being still called the British Grand Prix, even though all Irish people would hate that for all good reason. But geographically, at least, that would kind of be excusable. But come on. Oh, it's the Malaysian... We're in Malaysia racing. But no, it's the Bahrain Grand Prix, of course. Fuck off, honestly. Just be a normal, logical people, please. What a stupid, stupid thing. If that does actually happen. I don't see why it has to be called or presented as the Bahrain Grand Prix. Why? It doesn't make any sense to me why it's going to be presented as that. Like, I mean, you know, normally with Liberty Media, it's for financial reason, but you know, the race is not being held in Bahrain, so is that why they're calling it the Bahrain Grand Prix? Because the Bahrainis are still going to pay for it, even though it's not being held there? Like, you see what I mean? It's such a stupid reason, a stupid thing to do. I really hope that's not true. Actually, one thing it does remind me of, do you remember? But again, this geographically at least was logical to a point. Do any of you guys remember when they used to call the European, or not the European Grand Prix, we raced, back in the 90s, they raced at the Nürburgring a couple times and they called it the Luxembourg Grand Prix. Obviously, the Nürburgring is in Germany, not Luxembourg. But at least Luxembourg is next to Germany. It's not, you know, like, you know, hundreds or even, I don't even know how far it is from Bahrain to Malaysia. Let me just look on Google Maps, the distance between the two countries. I mean, it won't show on Google Maps because obviously you can't actually, you can't drive, put it that way, from Malaysia to Bahrain, even though there's no land in the way. But of course, there are many wars and conflicts, which would, I'm sure, kill you before you even got near to Southeast Asia. But yeah, it's absolutely bloody miles away. So, what a stupid, stupid thing. Anyway, Q2 has started. No one's out on track, so don't worry, you haven't missed anything whilst I rant about this. But yeah, what an absolutely stupid thing. Let me just Google it quickly. What is the distance between Bahrain and Malaysia? Just over 3,500 miles between Bahrain and Malaysia. Yeah, of course it's the Bahrain Grand Prix, of course. How could it be possibly disputed as being anything other than the Bahrain Grand Prix in the Sakir fucking desert? What a joke. Anyway, let's get into the rest of qualifying. I'll rant about that another day. As Fernando Alonso, a man who's won in Malaysia 3 times, actually. Arguably the best drive of his career was in Malaysia in 2012. That was one of the first races I watched live of Formula One. I remember getting up that morning and watching it, even though it was quite a long race. Obviously, we had a long red flag period in between. But ultimately, it was Alonso who won then 14 years ago. That win and that amazing season where Alonso almost won the championship. As Alonso is on a lap, he will, don't know what lap time he'll do, but it's obviously not going to be good enough to go any higher than 16th once everyone sets their lap times. In terms of the front, Norris, did a 1:18.2. As Alonso just wrestling the car through the final corner to the line, 1:20.6, which is pretty slow. I don't think Aston Martin have got any tyres left, probably. So, not going to see any quick times from them. But, what was I going to say? Yeah, the best lap time we saw in Q1 was a 1:18.2, but when you do the tyre correction for Ferrari, in terms of, if Hamilton had done his time on the soft, it was actually a 17.9. So on the soft tyre, the best time in this session will probably be a mid 1:17 at best. 17.5, 17.6. As Max Verstappen does a very quick first sector. Red Bull actually looked decent, I would say, in that first qualifying. Let's see if they can show any more pace, though. Now we're getting on to the more important parts of qualifying. As he's nearly 2 seconds up on Alonso's time. So this is probably going to be a low 1:18 from Max, which is about what you would expect from the Red Bull in this part of qualifying, to be honest. As he passes the slow-moving Racing Bulls, now into the final corner. Turn 14. To the line. And it is a 1:18.2, as I said. So, yeah, that's about the lap time you would expect from Red Bull. For Q2, Ferrari and McLaren will definitely be getting into the 17s. Probably Mercedes to a degree as well. As Isaac Hadjar understeering like a boat and then getting into the gravel, touching the gravel. As for some reason someone's calling me. As he has spun onto the grass on the other side, and that did cause a yellow flag, which scuppered a couple people, but he's now, yellow flag's gone away, and Bortoletto's had to pit, which is a shame, because he was on a decent lap, I think. But yeah, Hadjar, he understeered, turned 12, touched the gravel, put too much throttle on, and spun it around. As Charles Leclerc, only a 1:18.9. That must be on... Either he had to back off of the yellow flag or that was on a used set of soft tyres. Norris second on a 1:18.5. Again, that's got to be a used set of the soft compound tyre. There's no way that's the best they can do. But the first run of Q2 as Liam Lawson goes fourth. Hulkenberg, where is he? He's in fifth. Lindblad has just gone up to third. And then, hold on, so it's Leclerc fourth, and then Lawson fifth, Hulkenberg sixth. Not anymore, because Piastri has gone into P5. Antonelli, quickest, 1:18.1. That's a good lap time for Q2 at this point, given that he should improve that time later on in this session. Gasly has gone 9th with Colapinto in 10th as Lewis Hamilton. We're looking at on a lap. George Russell has just gone up to 4th place. Russell 4.5 tenths slower than his teammate as Lewis Hamilton. What a lap! 1:17.9. Quarter of a second quicker than Antonelli, and there's just nothing you can do about that. That is a absolutely stunning time at this part of qualifying. As Antonelli saying on the radio, I've got no grip, Bono, like I don't know what we're doing. Something wrong with the tyres. I have 0 grip. Well, he's doing pretty well for having 0 grip, being in 2nd place. As is a replay of Hadjar. We've already pretty much seen what happened. Went into turn 12. He went too deep, touched the gravel, and then he just applied too much throttle, I think, and then it spun the car round. And Hadjar says on the radio, okay, but like, come on, someone's always the fucking same. I don't know if he's complaining about traffic ahead, but there was a car a few seconds ahead of him, but it was not the cause of that. So, yeah, absolutely no way can he argue that. That'd be complete bullshit from him. As Leclerc has been noted for a yellow flag infringement. We'll keep our eyes on that. That could be crucial for qualifying and for the grid tomorrow. In the drop zone, though, it is Gasly, Colapinto, Ocon, Alonso, and then Hadjar and Bortoletto have not done a time. Hadjar because he spun. Bortoletto had to back off then for the yellow flag and pitted. That's why he didn't do a time. So at the minute, it's Hamilton on top. 1:17.9, and yeah, that is a fantastic lap time for this part of qualifying. And if he does improve in the latter part of Q2, surely he'll get into the mid 1:17 range, which is exactly where he needs to be for this part of qualifying. Lewis saying it was a pretty tricky lap. There's plenty more time in it. And yeah, there is. Ferrari still looking very, very good. As Alonso is on his probably final lap of qualifying. Currently 14th, only because Hadjar and Bortoletto have not done a time. And Alonso, very good first sector. Nearly half a second quicker than Hulkenberg. Where's that pace come from? Is Alonso about to go for an absolute banzai lap? As Leclerc, we've been notified no further investigation for Leclerc in regards to a yellow flag infringement, so no issues there. What's Alonso's middle sector like? It's half a second up on Hulkenberg. What a lap this is from Fernando Alonso. As, he goes a bit wide there at turn 13. That would have cost him a couple tenths. And he comes round the final corner to the line. And he goes 10th. Incredible. Alonso, P10. He won't stay there, surely. But he is currently P10 on a 1:19.8, I think it is. What a brilliant lap, a brilliant session he's had. Like I said, he won't finish there, absolutely no chance. But fun whilst it lasted there for Fernando. As we now look at Isaac Hadjar back out there on a new lap. And yeah, Hadjar's definitely going to knock Alonso back down. He's gone 6 tenths quicker than Alonso just in the first sector alone. That's Hadjar through turn 10 and turn 11. Red Bull looking actually quite good. And a purple middle sector for Hadjar. Obviously, the track is improving a lot in terms of grip, track evolution really helping, but this is a really good lap from Hadjar. The car looks well planted. And Hadjar, as we know, a pretty good qualifying driver as he comes around the final corner to the line. What's the lap time? He's gone quickest! A 1:17.8. What a lap time. So I think Alonso and Hadjar then proving that the track is really ramping up a lot and there is a lot more grip on this circuit now. And yeah, what a lap from Hadjar. Who thought that was going to happen? A 1:17.8. That is by far the best lap time Red Bull have done this weekend. Surely Max Verstappen can go even quicker than that. Saying that, he's gone half a tenth slower than Hadjar in the first sector alone. Into the middle sector. And what's the middle sector time beam? He's 4 tenths down on Hadjar. As Antonelli... he's had his lap time deleted. So Antonelli's now in the drop zone, down in 15th. As Piastri does a purple first sector, Russell's done a good middle sector. Verstappen to the line, doesn't improve. Well, Red Bull, it appears they've got more pace than expected, but how much pace? It's hard to know with Max not improving there. Here's George Russell round the final corner. Goes up to 4th on a 1:18.4. That's not a good lap time at all, but he's going to get through with it. Piastri, 2nd. Half a tenth down on Hadjar. Here's Bortoleto. He goes up to 9th. That might be good enough. A 1:19.1 there for Bortoleto. Hulkenberg goes 7th. What a lap by Hulk. Lawson is 8th, so Bortoleto is out in Q2. Lando Norris. What a lap! A 1:17.4. He goes quickest. That is a stunner from Lando Norris. As Antonelli goes 6th, but Lindblad goes ahead of him up to 6th. Ocon, 13th. Leclerc in the drop zone now, but he is on a lap. Gasly goes 11th. Colapinto, only 13th. What can Leclerc do? Surely he can get himself into Q3. Yes, he does. Purple final sector, and he goes 2nd on a 17.6, but still nowhere near as good as Lando Norris. What can Hamilton do? Goes 3rd, 3.5 tenths down, but Lando Norris has just laid down the challenge to the Ferraris, and he said, I'm here, and I can get pole position. What a Q3 we are in for. But guys, there you go. That is Q2 over and done with. And Liam Lawson, by the way, is out. What a surprise. A driver that so normally gets into Q3 is out for the 2nd race running. But that is Q2 over and done with, guys. And your drivers that are through to the top 10 shootout: Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, Arvid Lindblad, Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, and Nico Hulkenberg. Congrats to Lindblad and Hulkenberg out of the midfield, getting in the top 10. And then knocked out in Q2, you have Liam Lawson, Pierre Gasly, Franco Colapinto, Gabriel Bortoleto, Esteban Ocon, and Fernando Alonso. Bortoleto, you've got to say, pretty disappointing. Disappointing lap there. Only 14th. That is not good enough. He should be at least 12th on the grid. Alpine, I thought, did a decent job. 12th and 13th. That's not too bad of a position to start from. But yeah, great for Audi getting Hulkenberg in. Can he finally get his first points tomorrow? That's what tomorrow's all about for him and Audi. But Lando Norris, that lap of 1:17.4, that has laid down a clear marker. McLaren, they're right in this fight. They can get pole, no doubt about it. They are right in there, and I cannot wait to see what happens. But right. Let me, as we are now in between Q2 and Q3, let me finish up this poll in the chat because there is a clear winner. I'll just wait for the results to come through. When they do, Astro earlier in the chat saying "fucking Desert Grand Prix be a better name. Make them race just on sand." It's so stupid. There needs to be an explanation for that. There has to be, and I guarantee you, it is some financial reason. I guarantee it. Because that's always what it is for Liberty Media. It's always about the money. So that's what it'll be. But the poll still hasn't appeared for me. So we'll wait until it does. But in terms of who can get pole position, I think it's between Ferrari and McLaren. Mercedes had a quite poor Q2 at the end there. Couldn't even get anywhere near the 117s. Red Bull, they're the dark horse in a way because Hadjar did a 117.8. Max, we know this weekend has been about 2 to 3 tenths quicker. So could Max get in there? Possibly. But with this Red Bull car, it's a bit inconsistent. So we'll have to see what happens. But at least going into Q3, it feels like it is definitely Ferrari versus McLaren in the fight for pole position, which is pretty much, I think, what we're wanting. As on Sky F1, they're just showing a replay of the Hadjar incident and how it affected drivers behind who had to back off. Such as, I think, Russell, Leclerc, and Bortoletto all had to back off on their laps. There you go. Who will take pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix? 440 votes. Thank you guys for voting if you did. And 42% of the vote went to Lewis Hamilton. 28% for Antonelli, 21% for Leclerc, and 9% for Lando Norris. Will Norris, the least voted there, actually end up being the one who gets it? But yeah, Q3 will be underway in a couple minutes' time. Pole position, the lap time for pole position is going to be either a very low 1 minute 17 or a very late 1 minute 16. I think the best time you can do is a 16. I'm going to go 16.8. I think is the absolute best lap time you'll see. But anywhere between a 16.8 and a 17.1, maybe a 17.2, I think is what the pole position time is going to be. So for your first run, considering the track evolution and the how much the track improves of lap time on the second run, for the first run, you're going to want to do at least a 117, what, 5, 117.6 at worst to put yourself in position to actually fight for not just pole, but the front, say 2-3 positions on the grid. If you can do better than a 117.5 with your first run, you're in really good shape for possibly getting the pole position. As We're looking on the broadcast at Charles Leclerc in his garage. Will he deliver pole position for a second year in a row? Or will it be his teammate Lewis Hamilton to take his 9th pole position in Hungary? In his first year here, he was on pole in a very controversial, maybe the most controversial qualifying session of all time. In 19 years ago, that was, in 2007. Can he go and take pole yet again? Q3 has now begun. We're about 30 seconds in. No cars yet on track, though. I will sync up the timer at the 12-minute mark. As it'll only, of course, be 2 runs you'll want to do because the tyres get such a pounding around this track. Also, just to clarify, as there you go, 12 minutes now to go in qualifying. The compounds that Pirelli have brought this weekend are the 3 softest compounds that they have, the C5, the C4, and the C3. So, also, for that reason, you don't want to be doing any extra laps on those tyres. You don't have to, because they just won't have the grip. And that's what's going to make the race tomorrow, I think, a 2-stop race, probably. Because the tyres will probably get quite a pounding. And there's a sign there in the crowd saying, George Russell, you can win this. I believe in you. Yabba dabba do. Still, nobody decides to join the circuit. Looks like McLaren, though, are about to send the man who's topped Q1 and Q2 and practice 3 this weekend. A man who's in top form, really, in these last 2-3 races. And, of course, is the world champion and won this race a year ago, Lando Norris. The first car, though, out in the pits looks like it is the not the world champion, so used to saying it in the past, but Max Verstappen. Hadjar did a 1:17.8 in Q2. Can Max at least better that with the first run in Q3? If he can, he's putting himself in the mix for a good result. As Mercedes still in the pits, both Ferraris are lined up at the end of the pit lane. They just stopped in the pit lane and just waiting for the cars ahead to get off ahead of them so they can build a bit of a gap. And now the Mercedes cars are about to come out. Antonelli and Russell. And for Mercedes, given how quick McLaren and Ferrari look, yeah, 4th, 5th is probably the absolute best result they can get here. Definitely on the back foot this weekend. Here is Max Verstappen at a track where Red Bull were not expected to be quick, and they've not really been that quick this weekend. Can Max, as he usually does, pull something out of the hat? Well, here is his first attempt at pole position at the Hungaroring. It's been quite a while since he took pole position last here in Hungary. 2019 was the last time Max Verstappen was on pole. The only time he was on pole at the Hungaroring, 7 years ago. As into turn 2 he goes. And as usual, they take the wider line towards the exit of that corner. Turn 3 is flat. Turn 4 is a quick flick left. 27.5 for the first sector. That's good. But not as good as Piastri, who goes slightly quicker. Lando Norris is about to complete his first sector. We'll see what his is like in a moment. Norris does a purple first sector by about a 10th. Good start for Lando. Verstappen. He's doing a decent lap, but just doesn't appear to be as good as the McLarens behind him. As I like a bit of a oversteer on there on the exit of turn 12. Piastri still slightly quicker than Max on this lap so far. As Lando going quite a bit quicker than his teammate. As Verstappen, 117.7. It's good, but I'm not sure it's good enough. Here comes Piastri. 117.6. He goes quicker. What about Lando Norris? Bit of oversteer through the final corner, but to the line, he does a 117.3. That is a very, very good lap. Isaac Hadjar, 117.8. He's in fourth. Here come now the Ferraris. Hamilton is in a purple first sector. He's only a 10th off Norris through the middle sector. This is going to be close. The Ferrari normally is really good in the final sector. If it could be as good as it was compared to the McLaren in practice, then he might be able to end up on top. Through the final couple corners. As Hulkenberg goes behind Lindblad. What's Hamilton done? He goes quickest, a 117.2. What a lap by Hamilton. As Leclerc goes third on a 117.4. Antonelli goes fourth. That's a good lap. Where does George Russell go? Seventh. That is pretty disappointing to say the least. But for the moment, it is Lewis Hamilton by almost exactly 1/10 of a second, who is on provisional pole position with 6 minutes to go in qualifying. Norris second on a 17.3. Leclerc third on a 17.4. Antonelli fourth on a 17.5. The fight for pole is between the top four. And it's going to be either Ferrari, McLaren, or Mercedes on pole position. But really, I think it's mostly between that top three. Hamilton, Norris, and Leclerc. Who will ultimately take pole? As Lando Norris, we've seen a replay here of him having a poor final sector, which potentially cost him quite a bit of time. And yeah, quite a bit of oversteer in the final corner. That might have cost him being on provisional pole going into this final lap. But now everyone returns to the pits. And it is the calm before the storm of the final run in qualifying. Piastri's in fifth. 3.5 tenths slower than his teammate. That's not good enough. He's got to be a lot closer. Max Verstappen sixth. To be honest, I feel like that's probably the best that he can do. Red Bull just don't have the pace. Russell seventh. Very disappointing. Position-wise, but if you look at the pace, he's only 2 tenths slower than his teammate, so is it really that bad of a lap, or Mercedes just not that quick? Bit of both, you could argue. And then Isaac Hadjar 8th. Hadjar is only a 10.5 slower than his teammate. The Red Bull, yeah, I think they're doing about the best they can. 6th and 8th currently. And then Lindblad is 9th. 4 tenths quicker than Hulkenberg in 10th. So Lindblad looks like he very well could end up 9th on the grid. Unless Hulkenberg finds a load of time. But I said, anyone who does a mid 1 minute 17 or better is right in the hunt for poles. So anyone really in the top four is are the ones who are in the fight for pole position here. Ferrari absolutely need pole. McLaren absolutely need pole for different reasons. Mainly because they want to win a race this season. Ferrari need it for the championship. Antonelli, if he can somehow get on pole, of course, that would be amazing for the championship. But for him, he doesn't necessarily need pole position. Remember that. As long as Kimi is... If he can get to the top 3 on the grid, that would be a good enough result for him. Given he's nearly 50 points clear of Hamilton in the championship. As now the cars, they've been refueled, retired. And now they're all filtering back out onto the track. And it looks like the Ferrari cars are the first on the circuit, so they'll be going first. That's the Red Bull there, coming out of Max Verstappen. And then Antonelli. Russell's not too far behind in the background there. But will it be this man on our screen, Lando Norris? Will he take pole position? It would be some effort if he did. As Hulkenberg blocking the McLarens a bit, but that's just to give him and the others some room to the cars ahead. As Lewis Hamilton. This is coming through. The final couple corners before starting his final attempt at securing what would be a 9th pole position in Hungary and his first pole position in a normal qualifying session for 3 years. And if he's going to win the championship, that elusive 8th championship, this could be one of the biggest moments of his season. Here he goes. He starts the final run towards a possible pole position. Through turn 1, now into turn 2. Flat through 3. What will the first sector be? Oh, it's not good. It's nearly 2/10 down on his personal best. Thankfully for him, the first sector is the least important part of the lap, but he's got to make sure the rest of the lap's good. Leclerc has also not done a personal best. And neither has Verstappen. Has the track lost its grip? We saw this last year. As Hamilton through turn 11. And he's 4/10 down on his personal best. I don't think he can improve. I think that, and yeah, he's just done a big power slide on the exit of turn 12. Hamilton, he can't improve. Leclerc is not improving. Verstappen is also not improving, but I don't think Max is that far off his personal best as Hamilton comes to the line, and yeah, 118.7, I think that was. So he doesn't improve. Antonelli, though, is improving crucially. Leclerc also doesn't improve. Can Ferrari get... Oh, look! Max Verstappen has spun in the final corner as Antonelli had to encounter that yellow flag. And Russell's had to back off as well. I didn't quite see why Max spun. Thankfully for McLaren, though, they're still midway through their lap, so that won't affect them. So Mercedes are currently 4th and 7th, and that is probably where they will end up. Norris, purple middle sector. Nearly 2/10 up. Is this going to be pole position for Lando? There's a yellow flag. Where is it? Is it at the final corner? I don't know where it is. Is it the final corner? I don't know, but he comes to the line. It's pole position. A 1:17.2, and it's 0.012 of a second ahead of Hamilton. Hulkenberg goes 10th. Piastri presumably is backed off or wasn't improving. But did Lando... We obviously asked this question. That's why there's a yellow flag. George Russell has broke down into turn 1. Car has stopped, so that's why there was a yellow flag. So that wouldn't have affected Lando because he had not finished his lap. He'd already gone past turn 1 way before. So Lando Norris is on pole position. What a lap by Lando. Lewis Hamilton is 2nd. Leclerc 3rd. Antonelli 4th. Antonelli was so close to getting 3rd, but 4th is still a decent result. Piastri 5th. Verstappen 6th. Love to see what happened with Max's spin. Russell 7th. Hadjar 8th, Lindblad 9th, Hulkenberg 10th, and into the final corner. He goes to turn in, and the rear end just completely snaps on him. Is that another rear wing issue? We'll have to find out after qualifying. But that's your top 10. And the rest of the field, Lawson, Gasly, Colapinto, Bortoletto, Ocon, Alonso, and then Behrman, Sainz, Albon, Stroll, Bottas, and Perez. But congratulations to Lando Norris for taking pole. What a lap, and he thoroughly deserved it. Ferrari, they're two drivers. They just didn't improve the final lap. That's why they didn't end up getting pole. All they had to do was improve that final lap. I mean, for Lewis Hamilton, all he needed to do was improve it by a couple hundredths of a second, and he had pole position. So Ferrari messed up, and McLaren and Lando Norris took advantage, and he's on pole. Can McLaren take their first win of the season tomorrow? We'll see. But let me just start up a poll for you guys asking who your driver of the day is for qualifying in Hungary. For me, driver of the day is pretty comfortably Lando Norris. Thoroughly deserved. Super quick all weekend, as he was last weekend at Spa. And yeah, that was a thoroughly deserved pole position. Lewis Hamilton, I'll put him in there. I'll put Kimi Antonelli in there. And I will put... I'm going to put Hulkenberg. Actually, no, not Hulkenberg. Fernando Alonso, of course. What am I talking about? So let me know who your driver of the day is. I'm going to go, like I said, Lando Norris, driver of the day. Can he win tomorrow? It's going to be tough. Ferrari still are very quick. Ferrari are quicker than McLaren. I think, the reason they didn't get pole there was purely because they didn't improve their final laps. It's not because Ferrari, they don't have the pace. The pace is there. The drivers just didn't deliver good enough laps. McLaren and Norris, they found more time. Ferrari didn't. Maybe you could say because there wasn't any more time in there for Ferrari, but I mean, Hamilton was 1.6 seconds slower on his final lap, so it's not like he was slightly slower. Leclerc was also quite a bit slower than his best lap, so the drivers failed to deliver when it really mattered, which is surprising because Leclerc and Hamilton are normally two drivers who deliver consistently when it really matters in qualifying. But Lando Norris, someone who's also really good over a qualifying lap, has delivered right there. And this is definitely McLaren's best chance to win a race. And if they do win a race this season, I fancy it will very likely be tomorrow. So, yeah, Norris first, Hamilton second, Leclerc third. Antonelli, I think, will be not happy with fourth, but I think he'll be satisfied. Hamilton is only 2 positions ahead of him. Mercedes have actually got a decent race pace. And his teammate is in 7th, so he doesn't have to worry about his teammate. He'll be ahead of his teammate in the race. So, yeah, keep your eye on Antonelli. As long as Kimi finishes on the podium tomorrow, that's good enough for him. Because even if Hamilton wins, it's only a gain of 10 points for Lewis. Lunar Classic says track evolution helped Lando. I mean, yeah, but the Ferraris were out there as well. It's not like Ferrari didn't go out and do a lap. They were out there as well. Why couldn't they improve? So I don't think it's luck or any bad fortune on Ferrari's part. They just didn't deliver when it mattered most, which is a common set of words that we tend to say when it comes to Ferrari. Don't deliver when it matters most. But at least this will make the race more interesting tomorrow, because I was thinking it's probably going to be a Ferrari front row and then they'll probably dominate the race. It could still happen, to be honest, because they do get really good starts, the Ferrari. but at least it makes it a bit more interesting, especially for the start. But let me read a few of your comments before we finish up the poll and head off. Will saying fuck. Looney Classic saying I don't trust Lando to keep Lewis behind him. We'll see. I mean, in terms of pure pace, Lando is really driving well at the minute. He's really, this is peak Lando we're seeing right now. But of course, Hamilton also in good form this year. Ferrari still are very quick. If those Ferraris get a good start off the line, Lando's going to have to do something quite spectacular defensive-wise to keep himself ahead. In terms of, if Lando leads at the end of lap 1, I don't think Ferrari are going to be able to overtake, really, because McLaren have got a Mercedes power unit. So, unless Ferrari are so much quicker through the final couple corners, I just don't see how they can get past. Looney Classic says, can't wait for the Ferrari engine upgrade at Monza. If that works, then Lewis is really in it. Absolutely. And that's another reason I can't wait for that race as well, because I think if they can, say, maybe winning that race, then I think game on for the rest of the season. Edward Martin saying, come on, Lando, young brother. Astro says, my drive of the day is Alonso, because even with the upgrades, Aston Martin is a rubbish truck with brakes stuck on and a particularly bad engine and driver. 2/3 asleep at the wheel. Not Fernando, but metaphorically 4 at the car. If you want to go Alonso, absolutely, I don't have a problem with that. Super job by Fernando. And I'd say probably the 2 best performances in qualifying, Norris and Alonso, today. Let me just have a look, see if there's any other comments. Yes, Sarah Gara saying Alonso 16th, not terrible, I guess. At least, with Alonso, who obviously is the one who can get the most out of that car, at least now that, they can actually fight other cars that are not Cadillac. At least they can fight Williams and maybe Haas if they're having a bad day. Because it's got to be boring, not just being at the back, but being so slow that you can't fight any other cars, and all you're doing is just getting out of the way for cars behind. Not just the front runners, but even the midfield runners. I'm pretty sure, for example, at Silverstone, that Aston Martin were surely lapped by everyone at least a couple times. Will I be able to see? Let me look. Yeah, both Aston Martins were a lap down, so even under the safety car, they still weren't able to unlap themselves. I think actually they were. I think they did actually unlap or take 1 lap off, so they were actually 2 laps down. So, yeah. Vettel Hamilton says Ferrari are going to gain huge points on this weekend. Possibly, if they can win and the other car is at least third, that's 40 points, and then Mercedes, as it stands, are only heading for 18 points. That's a gain of 22 points. That put Ferrari probably 50 odd points behind. So you definitely can't say the Constructors' Championship's over. And if Hamilton wins and Antonelli does not get on the podium, then the Drivers' Championship is still on for now. But long race tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm going to finish up the poll as we've had nearly 30 votes. And I'll wait till it appears. But yeah, that was a decent qualifying session. A bit more competitive and closer than I expected, put it that way. Which is usually the case. Yeah, I asked you guys who's driving the day for qualifying in Hungary. 29 votes and 45% of the vote has gone to Lando Norris. 38% for Hamilton. 10% for Alonso. 7% for Antonelli. Yeah, thank you guys for coming along for this qualifying watch along. As usual, thank you to all of you who come along so regularly. As I said earlier, I won't be doing a race watch along, so make sure to check out my podcast on Monday, where I will go through what happened. I'll give my thoughts in that podcast as to, my thoughts coming out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. And remember as well, there are 2 summer break videos coming out next week. A video about Max Verstappen potentially going elsewhere, and a 2027 driver lineup prediction video. So make sure to check those out next week. The Max video is on Tuesday, and on Thursday will be the driver lineup video. So make sure to check those 2 videos out. But yeah, thank you guys for coming along. As usual, before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new for more content like this. Make sure to smash a like button and share this video and stream out before you go as well. Thank you guys so much, and this will be the final live stream on the channel until Saturday qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix, which is in a month from now. So that'll be August the 22nd will be the next live stream here on the channel. So guys, enjoy your summer break, enjoy most of August, and until my next video, the podcast on Monday, and my summer break content, and until my next live stream, qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix on August the 22nd. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.